was and where it wasn't. So, were the candidates telling the truth tonight all the time?
Our senior correspondent Scott Cohn checking all the facts for us. Scott, what do you got?
Boy, our fact checkers were busy tonight. Of course, that first segment, which you've been talking about on taxes, in a lot of ways revolved around semantics. A little tough to fact check, but does a tax cut cost money if it is paid for, essentially? President Obama calls Governor Romney's tax plan a $5 trillion tax cut. As you heard, the governor begs to differ. Let's listen again to what they said.
I'm not looking for a $5 trillion tax cut. What I've said is I won't put in place a tax cut that adds to the deficit.
It is not possible to come up with enough deductions and loopholes that only affect high-income individuals to avoid either raising the deficit or burdening the middle class.
All right, let's dive into that a little bit. The $5 trillion figure, first of all, comes from the left-leaning Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. They're talking about budget cuts that would be required, program cuts over 10 years. It says the Romney tax cut would require $4.9 trillion in program cuts, again, over 10 years to pay for it. Romney says he would pay for it, as you know, by closing loopholes, but the Tax Policy Center says that would disproportionately affect middle-class families in terms of deductions, which, again, is where the president gets this.
The average middle-class family with children would pay about $2,000 more.
Romney says that is not his plan. He said it once and for all. We've been talking about this again and again for weeks, and Romney said he has his own studies. I said about half a dozen studies. The chief one the campaign is pointing to comes from the conservative American Enterprise Institute that challenges the TPC assumptions on the deductions that would have to be cut, and says economic growth from tax cuts would be what would close the gap. You heard Larry talking about that before. Bottom line, both candidates agree that cutting taxes does have a cost, but the $5 trillion figure is dubious, and just the same, Romney again tonight did not say specifically how he will pay for his proposed across-the-board tax cut, just so that he would work across the aisle. Let's talk about health care. Mitt Romney hit Obamacare on a number of fronts, including the Independent Payment Advisory Board the act created.
It puts in place an unelected board that's going to tell people ultimately what kind of treatments they can have. I don't like that idea.
Well, neither does anybody else, because the law specifically bars the board from rationing care, raising premiums, or restricting benefits. Finally, green jobs. Here's what Mitt Romney said.
You put $90 billion into green jobs. And I'm all in favor of green energy. $90 billion. That would have hired 2 million teachers.
Good zinger. Did he spend $90 billion, though, on green jobs? Well, sort of. According to the White House, in the Recovery Act, the stimulus, the biggest chunk is $29 billion for energy efficiency, some of which, as we pointed out a month or two ago, Congressman Paul Ryan tried to get for projects in his district. Another $21 billion for renewable energy, $18 billion for high-speed rail. Again, all part of the Obama stimulus program. Finally, the whole bit about energy independence that Romney has been talking about. As we said in an earlier fact check last month, that is something that the very studies that Romney points to, the very analyst reports, they say that we're already on the way to North American energy independence. So he's kind of trying to claim credit for something that's already there. There's your early fact check.
You had a tough job tonight, Scott. Thanks so much, Scott Cohn.